Hi, welcome to my beginners series. We're going to do some snowy trees today. I'm just going to use two colours, which is ultramarine and burnt umber from this Cotman palette. I'll pop a link for the palette on in case you're still looking for supplies. I have a round number 10, a round number 6 and a rigger in a size 2. These are a synthetic blend brush. My paper is Saunders Waterford. It's a rough paper, and I've taken a 1/4 imperial sheet and I've tore it down into 4, so it's 1/8 imperial size, a nice manageable size when you're a beginner. So I'm going to work directly from this palette. It's the colours that I have. If you haven't got these colours, do not worry, use something that is close to it. So round number 10, I'm going to come on and pop some water on. I want to make sure that this is totally covered and that I've got a nice sheen. So I want no dull dry bits, but I also don't want any puddles. If you're using a wood pulp paper, which is slightly different, then you just need a nice sheen. It doesn't quite take as much water as a cotton paper. I prefer a cotton paper. It gives me more time. It's more forgiving. Okay, so that's nice and wet now. So I'm going to load my brush up with some water and I'm dipping into the ultramarine blue. I'm going to create a nice sky. There's a really complex version of this painting for a beginner and an improver that will come out shortly as well. I'll pop a link so you can go to that one and watch that one, because you'd always learn something from it. So horizontal strokes. Firstly, I loaded the brush with water. Now I'm coming in with a bit more neat ultramarine. So I'm just dipping in, just creating a variety in the sky. Rinse my brush off. I'm going to load it again with water and I want to come into the snow. So this is creating a little bit of shadow, but I'm leaving white gaps. So I've got sky and I've got snow. I'm going to swap down to a round number 6. Going to dip into the burnt umber. I've dipped into a little bit of water. I'm just going to start to create some trees within the background, or some shrubbery. I'm just varying that height a little bit so it's not all the same height. It's arching down, it's a little bit of a hill, and I can vary it, bringing it up a little bit as well. I want some bits to be a little bit darker. Again, it's just adding a bit of variety. I'm going to keep these darker bits towards the left and right hand side. So then I'm dipping straight back into the burnt umber and just bringing that in a little bit more. Everything that I'm doing is giving a sense of distance. Okay, rinse my brush out. And then I'm going to make a mix of both these colours. So this is going to make a grey. If it's too brown, you want a bit more blue. If it's too blue, you want a bit more brown. And with that mix, I'm going to come in, pushing the brush down, but I'm sort of arching either way. I'm using my hand, my wrist to arch. I'm resting my wrist on the table so that I'm getting a nice, these are the tops of trees there. Then going to twizzle around, and I've come down to my rigger and I'm going to pop in a few branches and trunks. So nothing too precise, I'm just starting where that hedgerow is and just bringing it through. These are going to give us some distant trees. There we go. Now this bit isn't compulsory, but it does add some frostiness. So I have got normal table salt here. A little sprinkling, and I want to sprinkle this onto where I've popped that grey for the tops of the trees. So I'm going to be quite precise about where I'm going, and it's a light sprinkle, not big clumps. This works best when the sheen is just going off on the paper, and what the salt is going to do is it's going to pull out the paint and make the trees look frosty. If you got it everywhere, it'd look like a snow scene. So we're just going to create some frosty trees. Okay, so I'll let that one dry. Okay, so that's nicely dry now, and what you need to do is make sure you rub the salt off, so you'll be able to see, I'll just come a bit closer, you've got all this lovely texture that's appeared, and basically the salt has lifted out the paint and has created the nice frosty snowy effect. If I come back, so just spend some time, you can usually tell when it's gone because it doesn't feel gritty anymore. Just make sure that you've got that salt off. Okay, so I want a couple of bigger trees in now because that's going to give us a better sense of distance. So I'm going to use the grey. I'm going to just decide where I want these bigger trees to be. So if I'm going to bring one in here. So this is my round number 6. Coming to the bottom of there. I want to bring some branches through. So as I come off, I'm varying the pressure. So I start heavy and then I get lighter with the pressure. I'm going to stagger where these branches come off so that they don't all end up in the same place. If they come off at the same place, it looks wrong. And just use the brush that's the best size for you at that point. So I can come down to my rigger and just do a few little wispy bits at the bottom. I can start to pull off. The rigger I rest on my little finger. Don't be afraid to overlap a few branches. Bring them off in different directions. The more you practice trees, the better you'll get, and the more you look at trees, the better you'll get as well. These little flicky branches at the very end. If you're struggling to get to an area, this is why I put this on here, so I can twizzle around. Sometimes it's easier to paint something upside down because you can get to it a little bit easier. So that's another tip. Don't be afraid to move your paper. So you can see already that sense of distance is coming because we're using dry, darker paint towards the front. So I'm going to pop 2 trees in here. So I'm going to go one here. And then one a bit closer. So if it's a bit closer, it needs to be a bit thicker. as a rule, that works best. It gives a better sense of perspective. Obviously that isn't always the case. You might find that you've got a massive tree in the distance and tiny little trees in the foreground, but if you want something to make it work, then this is a way to do it. And then putting some bigger branches on again with my round number 6. And then I'm going to twizzle around. I find it easier to paint this way, and use my rigger resting on my little finger to extend these out. So it's like lovely winter trees. Make sure you overlap some branches. All come together. Make sure you've got a nice jaggedy bottom on a bigger trunk as well. You'll see that I've done a jaggedy bottom there. Always works. Don't want anything too smooth. You can get smooth ones in the snow, but it tends to be very deep snow. And then if I twizzle round, you'll see you're getting a really nice sense of distance now. You've got those ones in the background, all frosty or misty, and then you've got these ones in the foreground. So the first thing I'm going to do is, just with a wet brush, is just bring in until it's just got somewhere to run a little bit, that paint, and it just softens them in. You can see it instantly softens them in. This one is a little bit dry, so if that happens, just dab a little bit of the grey in, and then you can just take a little bit in, and that'll help to soften that in. And now it's all about shadow in the snow. So load my brush up with water. I'm going to dab into the ultramarine blue. If you are worried about how much or how strong this is going to be, then let's just do this palette. I didn't even realise this bit in this palette worked until I was trying to clean out one of the other bits. There we go, look, you've got extra space. The things you don't know. So I'm going to take a bit of water into there and dab in some blue. So I know that this blue is now watery. I'm not coming on with anything too strong. And with my round number 6, I'm just going to start to create some shadow. So if I want some shadow from the trees, I can come in this way. So that means the shadow for that tree would go that way, so we wouldn't have any. But just create some little random bits, undulations in the snow. If you start light, put your pressure on and lift light, you're going to get these little bits appearing. You can just randomly stick a few on. And it'll instantly start to bring it to life. You want a few bigger bits. The trick is to not eliminate all of the white. There's a few bits coming off these trees. So you'd have like the branches and a little bit of shadow. A few dabs. And then if you take a little bit of the burnt umber. Now, this you've got to be very careful with, but you can just add in, especially around the bottom of the trees, add a little bit, and it just gives them a little bit more oomph. Not a lot. You don't want it to look like a mud bath. If when you're doing this you think, oh, that looks too strong, it happens. I want you to get a bit of kitchen towel that's dry. You can just dab in. It's not often that I would tell you can dab, but snow dabbing works. It's a valid technique. Okay, so I'll dry that off and take the tape off. And there we go, so that one's finished. Look how beautiful it looks, and we've just only used 2 colours, ultramarine and burnt umber, so it shows you how you can create something with that still looks absolutely beautiful but is very limited in the colour, and it's the glow of the paper that makes this picture. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something. I'll pop my super easy beginners playlist down here, and I shall see you next time.